All right, so just pay attention to your template now that we have this all set. Make sure that you have the top indicator here. And so we're gonna recheck before we start cutting the tile to make sure that everything's gonna fit. But keep in mind that this drain system right here, this is how you're basically indicating the center of the drain, is that this kind of slides right into the drain to center it up. But just know that you don't necessarily need to have this centered. So, I mean, you could be a ½ inch, an inch, just as long as you can service the drain, you can make this work however you need to make it work. So keep that in mind when we're gonna be cutting that tile, because we're gonna make sure that the tile work looks perfect around here. We're not gonna be necessarily concerned, you know, if we're a ½ inch over, not a big deal. It's better to have a nice looking tile project than having the drain completely centered. But as long as you can service it, you'll be in good shape. But you know, really when we were templating this, we were just using these little stubs to make sure that this drain was centered so that we can get a good accurate measurement of what would be ideal for it to work. Okay, just make sure that we have everything where we need to be here. Okay, so keep in mind that this template was pretty tight in that space. So all the markings that we have here, you basically want to cut the line to give yourself some room. And yeah, that all looks pretty good, still exactly the way we wanted it. So in order to, you know, I don't really like relying on the actual template material that I use for this drain. I like to use the actual drain cover itself. So we're basically going to be adjusting this to fit the tile. So that was essentially, you know, let's go ahead and wipe off that marker point that we have there. But, you know, we'll be able to just, like I said, you have almost like, you can move it an inch all the way around if you wanted to. So we're just going to make it work for the tile work. So let me first remove the markings on here so that we get be more accurate. Let's just use a little bit of acetone. Wipe that off. So this is really where we want our drain to be. So we'll just place that there. So that tile is about even with this one. I think we'll go with that. So this is even with this is even with this. So each tile is just going to be a little bit different, but so yeah, we are still going to be cutting part of this tile, which it's better than having a little sliver. We didn't want to have this over, so we're going to basically be cutting the entire line, and that'll give us enough room for it to fit around the drain. All right, so there's a lot of different ways to go about cutting mosaic tiles, and one thing I would advise is being careful of like running this through a wet saw. Now this mesh is pretty good shape. I mean, honestly, this would probably take quite a bit of water and not saturate and fall off. But there are a lot of mosaics that are very flimsy. And if they get wet, basically all the tiles just fall off of it. And you definitely don't want to be trying to set all these types of hexagonal tiles individually. You'll just drive yourself crazy. So I'd be weary of just running this through a wet saw because you could potentially weaken the backing and have it fall off. So most of the time I just use a good grinder with a grinder blade. And I have a multitude of different methods of going about it, but when I need to actually see the line and be perfect, like the front edge of that shower, I like to just use a sponge and just the regular grinder wheel. Now when we get into the less accurate areas going around the shower perimeter, I have a shop vac that I can attach to a grinder. And then, you know, if I have chips or if I'm a little bit off, it's not a big deal. But the shower front is pretty important. So I'm going to make sure that I can see the blade and be able to cut this. So we're going to go ahead and start the front because that's going to be the most visible area. And all the rest, I mean, heck, I could be a ½ inch off and it's not going to even matter. But I really do think it's a better idea to just dry cut this stuff so that you don't have any issues with anything falling off the backing. All right, so we're going to basically, this is going to be half tile, so we're not going to be accounting for any adjustment with the width of the shower on this one because we want this front to be perfect with this grout joint. So we're gonna basically cut right along that line. When we do the rest of the shower, we're basically gonna be cutting the line, if not a little bit more, so that we have expansion, contraction, have movement around it. So this is actually the actual tile that we need. So I'm gonna just sand up the rock edges because this is right next to the shower. Right here. Take our polishing pad and go ever so lightly just to take the edge off.
Just show it up close so that you can show.
So it just kind of softens that up a little bit. But yeah, no chips. Works pretty well. That blade really does work well. It's really an inexpensive blade. I think it was, what, 20 bucks? It's pretty remarkable, actually. Okay, so for the sides, now we don't have to be as accurate, but you could definitely cut the entire thing that way. But as you can see, you know, when you have a dust shroud on here, you really can't see the blade all that well. So it's very, very difficult to, you know, make a perfect cut. But now on this one, we're gonna give ourselves a little bit of room all the way around there. So we're gonna cut the entire line off versus keeping it. So I'm gonna basically be cutting on this side of the line so that we have enough space. So you can see chips all over that. But if you really did have a problem with those chips, you can sand them down. So the polishing pad, see, that takes it right off of there. So get one of these. This will help, you know, hone and make things better if, you know, if you get some ugly, gnarly chips. Okay, so I do recommend, even though it's like time consuming, is to dry fit this, make sure it fits, because you don't want to spread thin set and then try to set this. So I would recommend, you know, we're not going to even cut out the drain until we dry fit what we have here. And if we need to make some adjustments, we will. But yeah, you know, take your time. I mean, tiling is definitely not something that you want to rush. Just want to take your time and make things sure that things fit. Some of these things you just have to, you know, when we set these in the thin set, you just have to move them around a little bit to make them more even. But yeah, you can see somewhere my drain will be just a little bit off center from what the actual center of the drain is. But again, you got so much flexibility. That's one nice thing about this drain. You could basically cut this to fit the tile to make it look right. Because being centered actually would be pretty far off. I'd be like that, and I'd have like that weird little sliver there if I had to be forced to be there. So this is one reason why it's really nice to use a drain system like this, because you can adjust this. When you have a standard thread-in type of fitting, there's no adjustment. So having movement left or right, front and back really makes a big difference. So now we'll go ahead and cut this. Now that we have everything laid out, we should be in good shape. Now you can even see here, I do have a little bit a bigger gap here that kind of grew here in the corner, but you know, this wall tile is going to step that side, so I'm not too worried about it. You know, so nothing has to be perfect. And I could even just move everything over this way a little bit when I start my pattern, because I'm pretty tight over here. So everything can kind of be moved over slightly, which might be the way to go about this. All right, so now we'll pull this back out in the fashion that we put it in so that we don't get confused of what's next. The tile butts up to these little ridges here. So this is going to be kind of like the grout joint that goes all the way around there. So this fits inside of here. So we just basically need to cut an 1/8 inch around. So basically if you cut the entire line off, it should be able to fit. If not, we'll have to be able to adjust it. I like the way that looks. That's all nice and tight. This one needs to be recut. You do have a little bit of a triangular piece there. Oh boy, that's not what I wanted. All right, well, that did not work out as planned. I see, because I see how I can move this back and forth. So I'll be able to move this and adjust this to my tile work.